Carolyn says, hello, Carolyn. She says, I have a bunch. So, Carolyn's first question is about the color of water and what affects it. She says, I would think the Caribbean would be a different blue than the North Pacific. Like, do you have any thoughts on? Did you notice the different colors of water?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I think the North Pacific was a darker blue. The Caribbean is sort of a lightish blue. You see all the pictures of sort of the Caribbean islands and the beaches. It's a soft blue for sure, not a dark blue.
Just like the artist in me is really curious about like warmer and cooler. So like you'll get a dark, I think maybe what you're describing as dark blue could also be thought of as a cool blue, because warmer blue is more turquoise. Like it's got more, if we're being technical, it's got more yellow in it. Okay. It's got greenish yellow in it. So
yeah, you'll be the expert on this way more than me. Well, temperature is interesting because also the North Pacific, the water was quite cold, and it had that darker, like a navy blue kind of look to it.
Is it depth? I mean, is the ocean really deep in the Caribbean?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's like thousands of meters deep in large parts of it. It's colder. Definitely, there's a different kind of reflection of the light off the water as a result of that. And I think, I'm not sure what else contributes to it, but there's almost like in the Caribbean, there's a lot of life that exists near the surface. And I wonder if that contributes as well to the way that the color shows, or the way the light shows the color of the water. So there's, it's, so you see a lot more jellyfish and bioluminescence in the Caribbean than we would have seen in the Pacific. So it does change. Every ocean does seem to have its own color palette to it, which is very cool.
I bet.
Yeah, and then honestly, like there are parts of the ocean where we have a water pump that pulls water from the ocean to do some of our general cleaning stuff with salt water. It is phenomenal how hot the water got in some of the places. We have a water temperature reading because it actually tells you something about the weather. When the water is really warm, there's also a greater chance of storms building. Like
really,
I think Mike told us that for a hurricane to form, the water needs to be something like over 30 degrees Celsius for, I think it was like up to 10 meters below the water surface. So if you think about 10 meters down, or it might have even been deeper than that the water has to be 30 degrees Celsius, which is a pretty hot temperature. Like that's not quite a hot tub, but it's a very, very warm bath temperature. 10 meters or 15 meters deep in an ocean tells you like the ocean holds a lot of heat in parts of the world, and we see that as the water comes into the boat, how warm the water is. So that's also an interesting change from ocean to ocean, is just the temperature and not just the color, but the temperature. And so it's been one of the interesting things we've observed as we've gone around, is how that changes.
Wow. Great question. That's a neat one. And actually, Carolyn's next question is about bioluminescence. Yeah. Have you seen it? And if so, where?
Yeah, we see it almost probably on every leg except the legs around Asia. And I have a feeling that has to do with the amount of life that is left in those seas. I think with the amount of fishing that we saw and commercial activity on the ocean, there was we didn't see any wildlife around the Asian seas. But probably one of the most epic nights or experiences for those who've done around the world always comes back to a night off the coast of Uruguay on this race 2. We were maybe a couple 100 miles from getting to Uruguay, and the wind had picked up, and there was a big, quite good wind, and so all the waves had what they call white caps on the top, where the water's curling off the top of the waves. And at night, the entire ocean, every white cap was bioluminescence. So it was just like, it was the most stunning thing to see, that all around the tops of every single wave were like a light show going off.
Wow.
As far as you could see. That was phenomenal. And out the back of the boat, because we were going along quite fast, everything was being lit up.
Like the wake
of the boat was like a light show. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we've even had some nights where when you went to the washroom and you pumped the head, that the water, which is seawater coming in, had bioluminescence in it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you see it quite a bit, but mainly in the healthier parts of the oceans around the world. Mm-hmm. So it certainly seems to be some kind of an indicator of the health of the ocean. Yeah.
Wow. I had not thought of that.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that I had only ever heard of bioluminescence like in Puerto Rico or like the Caribbean. So it's interesting even just to hear. And I feel like I remember that when you were there in Uruguay, that I was like, oh, wow, there's bioluminescence in other places too.
It's everywhere, yeah.
So, wow, that's...
almost everywhere.
It's fascinating that it indicates a healthy ocean. There's other wildlife there when there's bioluminescence.
Well, yeah, I mean, bioluminescence, as I understand it, is algae. And so algae is, one of those on the food chain in the ocean that if it's not there, it's probably a sign that there aren't going to be other parts of that food chain hanging around either, right?
Well,
so,
yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's been certainly one of the highlights, is having those moments when you see that. But that night in Uruguay was next level in terms of like, it was like somebody was putting on a show for us.
Surrounded by it, and then out the back of the boat as well,
exactly.
The wake. That must have been really, really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Carolyn is curious regarding the massive ships in the Panama Canal. Have you ever seen shipping containers that fell off out there? That was her question.
Yeah, we did see, where were we? I think it was on the way to Seattle. We saw some floating debris that looked like it had come off a ship. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, through the Panama Canal, it's amazing how big those ships are. They've actually built a second canal right next to the original one, because the size of the container ships has grown so much over time that the old canal doesn't hold them anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think the biggest one we've seen was about 300 meters long.
That is, I believe, 900 feet-ish.
Yeah. I think it's over 1,000. Yeah. Because
Wow.
there's more than 3 point something feet in a...
Wow.
So yeah, 1,000-foot ship, about, I think, 50 meters wide.
Like how many football fields is it? Is that 10 football fields? American football
football field's 100 yards or so.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's,
wowzers.
Yeah, 10.
I think that's 10 football
Yeah.
That I'm glad that this came up too, because it reminded me of a question that I had earlier, which was, I learned as you were going through the Panama Canal that there are these people called canal pilots. I think that's what they're called. Did you have a canal pilot on the PSP Logistics?
We did, and every boat must have one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you pick one up as you enter the canal, and then they stay with you, and sometimes you switch to a different person partway through, and then until you're all the way through and out the last lock. So they're just making sure that you're steering the boat properly, that the lines that are tossed to the boat from ashore are secured correctly, so the boats aren't in danger of any damage.
Like running into other boats in the same little lock.
Yeah. So in the lock, like our experience was, we were tied up with one of the other clipper boats, and then there was a large container ship all within the same pen as we went through.
Okay, so I don't. I take me into why would lines be thrown from shore? How are you tied up with other boats? Like this is fascinating to me.
Yeah. So the lines are tied up from shore because what they want to do is keep the boats centered within the lock itself. Because as they add water or remove water, it creates quite a bit of turbulence inside the pen. So the boats do want to move around, but they want to keep them secure so they're not running into the to the edges. I mean, these are big, concrete, rock, structures. So you don't want boats made out of fiberglass banging into them.
To run into them.
Yeah. The ships themselves are designed to go through the canal. So they only have maybe a couple of feet on either side. So there's not that much movement of a big container ship.
Okay.
But they have pilots as well who make sure the boats get in safely.
Without
don't get stuck.
into things.
Yeah. But yeah, it was and really nice guys. Very, very. Awesome. That's their job is to help boats go through the canal. So, and then the people on shore that throw the lines. Like that's their specialty. They've been trained on how to throw a line that lands right where it's supposed to land on the boat. And it was quite impressive how they did that.
Like a lasso or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the two boats just sort of, we tie off, side by side, bows forward. And typically one of the boats is steering and is sort of under power and the other one's just along for the ride. So that's how they navigate. Mm-hmm.